Thanks for downloading the ArableAware podcast from Adama Agricultural Solutions UK. Now, would you believe it? They actually allowed us to produce a second series. So here we are for show 1 of season 2, and we've made sure that we're kicking off 2019 with a real special episode. My name is Russell Goldsmith, and once again I'm joined by Adama's in-house technical specialists on fungicides and herbicides. That's Andy Bailey and David Roberts respectively. And having travelled to Nottinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Norfolk and Oxfordshire last year, this time we've come to Hampshire to visit Whitewall Farm, where we're joined by Will Butler, who is one of the joint farm directors here. Now, the reason we're at Will's farm, aside from being told he's a lovely guy who kindly offered to host us today, is that he also has a very special robot on the farm. In fact, it's a small robot to be precise, and it's called Tom. Tom is a prototype that's been developed by the Small Robot Company, who have hit the farming business news recently following their successful round of crowdfunding that raised £1.2 million against a target of £500,000. And so I'm delighted that later on in the show we'll be joined by Small Robots founder Sam Watson-Jones and their robotics engineer Robin Jackson, who will be giving us a demo of Robot Tom. So all very exciting. We'll also shortly be hearing from 2 growers based in Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire to give us an update on how they've come through the winter and are preparing for spring. And so always we've got lots to get through. So Will, David and Andy, welcome all to the show. Will, just as the wind's picking up and the rain's starting typically, I'm going to come to you first. We always start each episode by getting to know our host. What can you tell us about Whitewall Farm?
I'm Will Butler. I'm the second generation here at Whitewall Farm. My father and obviously my grandfather bought it originally, just after the First World War. My father obviously came here. Originally we had a family farm in Farnham, which is in Surrey, and my grandfather came down, as I said, bought this farm in just after the First World War, and my dad came here when he was 20. Very much a mixed farm. We got about 450 hectares of arable, and obviously we milk 450 cows on a Sainsbury's contract, and also we've got a fair bit of diversification, trying to keep our heads above water.
And we're out in your wheat field at the moment. How's it all looking?
Yeah, no, this is a field of illicit wheat, a new variety to us this year. It was drilled on I think the 12th of October behind oilseed rape. We're probably unique that we bale all our rape straw and then sell it, so we don't quite have the pressure of slugs like some people do. So yes, it looks really well. It's come through the winter good. It's been a kind winter. Very happy with it.
David, Andy, we recorded the final episode of season 1 back in November. Any interesting updates from you guys since then?
In relation to what Will just alluded to, the winter weather, the winter conditions have been relatively kind. It's allowed good crop establishment overall. It hasn't prevented quite serious pest damage in oilseed rape crops. Certain areas have really been suffering with flea beetle. But overall, the impression I'm getting from growers and agronomists I speak to is the crops are looking pretty fit. You know, they've come through the winter well, and there's a lot of potential there.
And Andy, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think just to echo the same really. I mean, there's a number of forward crops. I mean think this crop here, as Will said, was drilled in mid-October, and this is quite forward. I mean, the September drill crops around the country, well, there's some lush and vigorous ones there, and this is where going into a spring now, and we're starting to get some catchy weather here with some rain, is where you really start to focus on what varietal resistance you've got for Septoria in your wheat. Now, you've just mentioned this is illicit, which is one of the newer varieties, and it's got a good level of Septoria resistance built in. But for varieties that haven't as much, then I would expect there to be some Septoria brewing up in many of those, particularly the September drilled wheats this year.
And before we get into the detailed matters of our usual chat, don't be shy. This podcast also won an award for Best Use of Audio in the Communicate Magazine Corporate Content Award since we last spoke. How does that feel being an award winner, guys?
It's obviously good, isn't it? It's very good. It's very pleasing to have good work recognised. So yeah, you've got to be happy about that.
Good stuff. Okay, well, as I said, back to matters at hand. Now, for the benefit of any new listeners to the show, in each episode we like to get feedback from growers around the UK. And our first update is from Simon Gadd, whose farm is based in a small village called Amber Hill, which is just outside Boston in Lincolnshire.
So we grow a large amount of autumn cropping with winter oilseed rape, winter wheat, spring barley, and also we grow spring beans as well. The soil types we have on the farm are a mix of Alderby and Beccles series, but this also goes from very light blowaway sands with a bit of a funny clay content in them to some more bodied clays into some quite nice silts in pockets around the farm. So the varieties we grow on our farm, for the wheats, we have Dickens, Zayat and Illicit. We used to grow quite a bit of Siskin, but have moved out of that now. Our spring barley is Explorer, and we just recently moved out of growing beans for this year, so they aren't actually even in the ground this year. Our winter cereals are looking quite well. Our winter wheat, our first wheats especially, are looking very lush. We had about 120 mil of rain in the second to third week of December, which has really helped keeping the water tables up. And now with the strange dry period and large amounts of sunshine, the first wheats are very, very lush. Our second wheats have recently had a dose of fertiliser, about 70 kilos of nitrogen on them, and they're looking quite good too. Our oilseed rapes in fine form at the minute, just trying to keep on top of the pigeons. Yeah, and the land for the spring barley is prepared. We're just waiting on seed now. Disease levels in the cropping at the minute are quite low. The oilseed rape, the life lease or anything like that seems to be well under control. Seems to be no true signs of FOMA that we could see back in the autumn, but we still put protecting on. The winter wheat is looking good. We normally have strong septoria problems, but I think with this drier weather we're in right now, it seems to be controlling the disease levels quite well. Yeah, we're not too bad at the minute. We're looking quite forward to a good spring, but by the weather, I'm assuming it's going to get cold again soon. The strongest problem we have on our farm for disease pressure is septoria. This is followed up by something like yellow rust in the drier years, but we haven't seen too much of that recently. But septoria is always a problem. We deal with this by robust chemical rates and timeliness of every application, making sure that if we have a window overlap, we get in with, say, a T1.5 to make sure we keep up the protection throughout the season. When it comes to weeds, the strongest pressure we have is blackgrass in our autumn cropping. This has actually been our worst problem for a long time, but now with spring cropping, with later drilling, with making sure we're more timely, and also drilling right before a wet period as well helps a lot, so that when we put down the preems, they work well. But our biggest problem now getting into our oilseed rape seems to be something like cranesbill seems to be creeping in a lot, especially in a bit of a more backward, thinner crop. The cranesbill seems to be really dominating, so that's been a problem that we've been dealing with. To deal with our blackgrass problem, we've moved into a delayed drilling scenario where we don't drill until at the earliest the last week of October, weather dependent, and hopefully a bit into November. This year we drilled our last field on the 31st of October. We also now have spring barley as well, which has been really helpful with dealing with it because we zero till our oilseed rape into the barley stubbles afterwards, so there's no movement of the soil for 2 years. That seems to really be getting on top of our blackgrass numbers. The autumn herbicides went on very well. The weather was quite kind actually, and the rain came at the right time in the end to help move the chemical into the rooting zone of the blackgrass so that it was controlled, and we had a very good control in the autumn. Normally in the spring we'd follow up with a top up, but this year with the high daytime temperatures, low nighttime temperatures, we felt that the shock to the wheat would be too great, which would cause too much of a detriment on the wheat yield levels, and so we haven't gone with one. This is also because the autumn application went so well, and we're actually seeing a low amount of blackgrass pressure this spring.
David, Andy, what's your thoughts on Simon's update there? David, let's come to you first.
Mirrors very much what we were just saying about the growth of crops post-winter, a lot of potential coming into the spring. I think Simon was quite fortunate to get that 120 mil of rain in December because many areas have been pretty dry, probably lower rainfall than they would have liked. Always pleasing to hear people getting on top of blackgrass problems, and equally pleasing to hear that it's due to a combination of cultural and chemical approaches to the spring cropping, the delayed drilling. Clearly, as Simon said, the moist seed belts help with the pre-emergence performance, and that's all got to be good. Just to note, with the problems with geranium and oilseed rape, Fox 480 grams per litre of bifenox, that does have an EMU for use in oilseed rape, and that is specifically looking at cranesbill geranium control. So pleased he's got good results from the autumn programme, all to look forward to in the spring.
Andy, any comments?
Yeah, I think following on from what I said earlier about wheats looking quite forward. I mean, Simon mentioned that his spread of varieties included Zayat and Illicit, which again have got, they've got good septorial resistance built in. He is growing Dickens, which doesn't have quite as much, so a bit moderately susceptible there. So, he also talked about robust fungicide programs. They include full program strategies. And interesting actually that he said, where it's relevant, he will include a T1.5, which is interesting as well. And I mean, I think that's very much, it's by far not a routine spray, but I think in certain seasons where you've got stretched intervals or pressure's really on, then selection of an appropriate product at T1.5 can be used to push yield,
Right.
providing that you take resistance management into consideration, and we just think about putting selection pressure with fungicides on fully, then choice at T1.5 often could be just a multi-site on its own, which then doesn't exert the selection pressure for these single-site fungicides.
Will, sorry, you wanted to add there?
Yeah, sorry. Listening to what Simon said, yes, there is potential to go through T1.5. We've even in the past done a T2.5. So if the disease pressure is there, it's better to go through with quarter rate, just something just to help with the septoria and whatever else is present at the time. So.
Right. Well, we're going to be quizzing you shortly with similar questions. So get ready for that, because we'll come to you for some more detail. Before we do, let's just hear from our second grower.
I'm Steve May. I'm the arable farmer for Fromount and Sanders. We're based at Kisenbury, just west of Northampton. We're farming around 350 hectares of our own and also roughly 350 hectares for various clients. Well, we're growing across the farm. We're growing wheat, winter barley, spring barley, oilseed rape, winter and spring beans, winter and spring oats. We've got a wide range of soils across the farm. We're mainly fairly light soils, but predominantly sandy loams. There is some clay caps. We have some clay caps on the farm as well. The cereals have come through the winter really well. They're now starting to move. They've had around 50 kilograms per hectare of sulphur, and they're all looking pretty good. They're around about growth stage 24. Shortly they'll be having sort of 60 kilos of nitrogen. Yeah, they've come through very well. It's been a remarkably warm, mild, dry winter. They look terrific, to be fair. Currently, disease levels are pretty reasonable. We've got some septoria and some mildew on the old leaves and the bottom of the wheat, but in general, they're looking very healthy. In a few weeks, we'll be putting a T0 on, which will be chlorothalonil, fenpropimorph, and epoxyconazole, and hopefully that should sort of start them off on a clean footing. The main disease pressures through the season come from septoria tritici. We try to look at growing varieties with good disease resistance. Yellow rust can also be challenging, but we look to get on top of that pretty early and stay on top of it with accurate spray timings. We employ a robust 4-stage fungicide program consisting of triazoles, chlorothalonil, strobes, and SDHIs in various formulations and sequences, and we're very careful to mix actives to avoid resistance buildup. Blackgrass continues to be a challenge. We utilise multiple stale seed beds and drill as late as possible using robust seed rates. We don't really start drilling till mid-October, and we run through to sort of early November. After that, we're stacking actives pre-em, and we'll also go post-em on odd fields with needing a bit of a top-up, but we'll only do that if we believe it's necessary. We also grow spring crops to give us a bit of extra blackgrass control. With those, we're sort of holding off the drilling until mid to late March, just to try and give us as good a blackgrass kill as we can possibly get. The autumn weather was good to us regarding our herbicide program. By the time we were drilling, we'd had enough rain, which helped with pre-em herbicides, and the soil moisture was key to the good weed control we've managed to get. The results are looking really good. The winter wheat's incredibly clean. We've got some very clean beans. Oilseed rape, we're a bit disappointed with, I think because it was so dry and also warm, the curb didn't really work particularly well. So that's one we're perhaps not quite as pleased with, I must say. Following up any herbicides in the spring, I don't think we're going to need to do any grass weed control, certainly not in cereals. We'll go through the cereals with some SU just to take out any broadleaf weeds. And there'll probably be some star aim for some cleavers as well.
So David, Andy, any comments on Steve's update?
Very similar in respect of herbicides, good activity getting on top of blackgrass because of the inclusion of not only the herbicides but obviously the cultural controls as well. Steve was talking about stale seed beds, about delayed drilling. More and more drilling now is pushing further into October, mid-October, late October, more and more, becoming more and more common, keeping the seed rates up for the competitive effect. And again, moisture in the autumn allowing the pre-em stacks to work to their best. This is all looking good, and the fact that both the growers, Simon and Steve, have got spring cropping in the rotation, that is definitely helping with keeping on top of the blackgrass problem.
And Andy?
Yeah, I think again Steve commented about the fact that his winter crops are looking good. I think he didn't just say good, he said very good. I mean, they you know, they do, and I think that's a countrywide thing, and he certainly said his did. And he talked about Septoria being the driver in his wheat in terms of what programs are based around. He talked about his T0 being based around chlorothalonil and then epoxyconazole fenpropimorph. Just a point to note there that the fact is that he's got a multi-site in there. He's using chlorothalonil. We have Folpet as Arizona, and it's interesting early on if you're using it with curative partner products, particularly ones that are good on yellow rust early on. Folpet doesn't antagonise the uptake of those products, so that's just a good point to note there about the choice of multi-site, particularly early on in a programme.
Good stuff. Well, good news here is that the rain has stopped and the sun's desperately trying to get out. But Will, we've heard from growers in Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire. How do things compare down here in Hampshire? Let's start with your winter cereals. How are they looking?
No, I think the winter cereals have come through the winter very well. They're very lush. Obviously, everyone's delaying drilling now, so even though this is probably a month behind from when we were where we were drilling 5 years ago, obviously 5 years ago everyone wanted to be drilled up by the end of September. Now it's as late as you can go in October. I think it's done very well. And this year it hasn't had any fertiliser because it's been too wet.
And what about disease levels? How are they currently?
At the moment, touch wood, if it carries on raining like it does maybe for the next week or so, we still have to try and squeeze a T0 on because we will get a bit of Septoria. So.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this here, it is amazing, isn't it? How these resistances now built into these new varieties and the difference it can make. I mean, okay, this is mid-October drilled, but it's lush forward, and there ain't much Septoria in it. If this was a variety like some of the ones, if this was a Diego or whatever, then you'd probably expect to see quite a bit in. But it is amazing what varietal resistance can do for you, and actually delaying drilling out of September also makes a big difference in terms of how much inoculum you carry in. We did also have that dry period, didn't we, as well, which has also just helped keep it at bay. But as Will says, I mean, if this weather carries on a bit like this and we've got canopies like this, then it does now brew some disease.
Do you have any particular disease pressures in cereals on the farm?
Normally the one's obviously been Septoria. That's the main disease pressure on this farm. But with timing the sprays correctly, using the right spray, hopefully we'll be on top of it. So.
And what control strategies do you employ in terms of fungicide programs and varietal selection?
Obviously, we're trying to grow varieties that are resistant to Septoria, because as I said earlier, that is probably our main disease, and we will base our treatments this year around chlorothalonil, because as we all know, chlorothalonil may not be around for much longer. So while it's sort of reasonably cheap and cheerful, we need to use the best we can. So that'll be. Most of our decisions will be based around the chlorothalonil.
Okay, well, we'll continue this discussion in a bit, but as I said at the top of the show, we're also joined here by Sam Watson-Jones and Robin Jackson of the Small Robot Company. So welcome to the show, gentlemen. Now, the guys have brought Robot Tom along, and we're going to learn a little bit about him shortly. But Sam, before Robin explains the technology behind what you're doing, let's get a bit of background story to Small Robots. You're a fourth generation farmer yourself. How do you go from that to launching a robotics company?
So we launched Small Robot Company 2 years ago, and I thought that there was an opportunity to use robotics and artificial intelligence as a way into creating a digital view of the farm.
So where does that start then? How do you start to get farmers on board and raise the funds?
So one of the first things we had to prove to ourselves and to others, I suppose, was that farmers, it wasn't just me, that other farmers believed that this should exist too. So we came up with this idea of developing something called our Farmer Advisory Group.
Right, okay.
And this is a group of 20 farmers spread throughout the UK. And these 20 farmers each put down a £5,000 deposit, a pre-sale on our services. And then they are part of an extended trial where we, as each part of our robotic service, Tom, Dick and Harry, becomes available, they appear on those farms. We test them out in a real farm environment. And those farmers feed back to us around what do they like about it, what do they not like, what do they think is going to work from a practical sense on the farm and what isn't. And we're trying to design something with farmers very much at the centre of that whole process, so that we come out of it with something that really works for farmers. And it's not technology being pushed onto the farm, it's farmers being an integral part of making this happen.
Yeah, and then that led on to the crowdfunding program.
Yeah, and then that led on to a really successful crowdfunding campaign at the end of last year where we raised 1.2 million. We've got 1,300 investors now, and about 30% of that 1.2 million came from farmers. So it's really important buy-in from the industry.
Well, Robin, let's understand where some of that investment is going then. We're out here in the field with Tom. Do you want to talk us through the technology and what you're hoping to achieve?
So I'm busy doing that digitisation of the field that Sam mentioned. If I just start our little robot up, there we go.
So I should say we're walking behind Tom at the moment.
Yes, we're walking behind Tom, who is roughly knee-high, is designed to look approachable and cute. Kind of the gist is to be a little dog-like. So at the moment we're just walking behind Tom, and Tom is taking 2 or 3 pictures per second of the wheat in a small area behind him. And the highest point on Tom is a little white disc, which is a Trimble GPS receiver. And as Tom takes each photo, he also records his position to within 2 centimetre accuracy using the same technology GPS you have on your phone. I'm sure farmers will be quite familiar with that from their tractors, and we're using the same technology, basically. And that's kind of the point, really. We're not doing anything massively new. We don't have great labs developing new technology. We're just using existing stuff that has ignored farming. So we're using this GPS data, we're using normal cameras, normal ways of digitizing anything, really, and we just happen to be applying it to fields.
We developed this vision, and then it was exactly as Robin said, it was the realisation that we weren't waiting for any huge tech developments. And one of the key reasons that that development hadn't happened in farming is because everything that we do on the farm has become limited by the machinery that we use. So the reason that we are not applying our sprays more accurately than we are today is because everything has to fit onto an existing sprayer. The machinery has become a limiting factor in how much technology can be developed or how much technology can be applied on farm. So for example, auto nozzle shutoff technology is a great innovation, but the maximum benefit that you're going to get is about a 5 or 10% saving on what you're doing. You're going to use 5 or 10% less chemical, 5 or 10% less fertilizer. If we redesigned the hardware that was delivering those chemicals onto the field, then there's the potential to get significantly more accurate. And one of the core issues is that we are using machinery that has been designed to be as fast as possible. It hasn't been designed to be as accurate as possible. It's been designed to maximise the efficiency of the man hours, to limit the amount of time that there's a person sitting in that cab driving that machine. Now, if you took the driver out of the cab and you designed some autonomous hardware where the key engineering criteria was accuracy, then you could do these things much more accurately than a sprayer. Now, the individual robot is not going to be able to do things as fast as the big, it's not going to be able to cover as much ground as the big agricultural machinery, but the idea is that you have something that is individually doing something more accurately, and then you just have lots of them. So you just have a swarm of these robots so that you can be both more accurate and more timely.
And Tom's one of a family?
Tom's one of a family. So the 3 robotic functions that we're developing are Tom, Dick and Harry.
Yeah.
So Tom is monitoring, and then that data is then analysed by Wilma. Wilma is the boss, she's the brains of the operation, and she's she's analysing the data as it comes off the field and then turning it into instructions for Dick and Harry. Dick is micro-spraying and non-chemical weeding. So not saying, okay, we've got some blackgrass in this field, therefore we're going to apply this chemical across the whole field, but saying we've got some blackgrass here and we've got another blackgrass plant that's 10 centimetres away from it, and we're going to go out and we're going to physically touch those blackgrass plants with an electrical charge and kill them without using chemicals. So taking all of that resistance issue out of the equation and analysing exactly where each individual plant is, and then dealing with the field on a plant-by-plant basis. And then Harry is a digital planter, so placing an individual seed in the ground and ultimately varying that seed spacing and seed depth based on artificial intelligence.
Okay. And Robin, how far are you now in the programme?
So I've been going up and down the country to our farm advisory group since October. We've gathered data from all those 20 farms, gigabytes and gigabytes of data, which we've fed into Wilma. And Wilma is now able to very happily recognise wheat from rocks and dirt, because fundamentally, what is wheat to a computer? It's a green splodge on the screen, but able to distinguish wheat from weeds as well. And what all this Wilma stuff looks like to a farmer is we can have we'll have a snake trail almost of photos on a particular field. And what we can do at the moment is go into a map, go into satellite view, and scroll in. And you can roughly see your car, but we can overlay our photos onto that view and scroll in further and further and further until you get to the point where, and we've had this happen, we've driven over a bumblebee nest, and from satellite view you can see an individual bumblebee just going along under the camera, and any bits of spores or damage to an individual wheat leaf. That's fantastic to see.
How long before you believe this will be standard practice in farms around the UK or worldwide? I assume is where you're hoping to.
We are 2 to 3 years away from having a first version of the full service available. The early adopters are going to be the first sort of 2% of farmers, which is all we need to start with. And we all know that farmers really only adopt things once they've seen it working in the neighbour's field. So I think we're probably still 10 years away from this being absolutely accepted as a mainstream approach. But there will be robots operating farms much more quickly than that.
And it's worth saying, once we're at that mainstream point, it's not just that you'll see robots in fields as you drive along the countryside. Eventually, the countryside will have changed to no longer accepting enormous bits of machinery.
It's a really good point. We're stood here in what I would guess is probably a 70 or 80 acre field of wheat. There's no hedges running through the middle of this field. It's open, it's relatively flat. And the reason for all of that is to make the machinery as efficient as possible. But we are then surrounded by big slopes, and we're in the middle of a valley where you don't see arable crops being grown. Actually, a lot of it's down probably in permanent pasture. And the reason for that is not because the soil is not good enough, it's because the machinery that we use doesn't operate unless it's a big flat open expanse. And what we're saying is, well, actually, if we had different hardware doing the job, maybe all of that stuff could come into production.
Interesting stuff. Sam, if listeners want to find out more information about small robots, or if any of other farms want to maybe sign up to the programme, where's the best place? Here's the chance for you to plug. Where's the best place for them to go?
So you can find out more about us at smallrobotcompany.com, and there's all sorts of different ways that we're engaging farmers. And it's not just about getting robots onto your field either. We're actually doing some workshops with farmers in the summer and through into the autumn around how does your mindset change once this technology becomes available. How are you going to think about yourself? How are you going to think about your farm differently? And we're working directly with farmers to do that. So yeah.
Tremendous. Sam and Robin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, well that's all for the future, but back to the present. We're back here with Will on Whitehall Farm. Will, the next thing we wanted to ask was whether you have any pressures from blackgrass, ryegrass, or any particular broad-leaved weeds.
We're very lucky on this farm. We have very little blackgrass. The main grass weed problem will probably be sterile brome, but no, where we grow maize, obviously for our dairy, and obviously grass as well. We can get the rotation, so we might have the odd bit of blackgrass. Don't get me wrong, but at present we don't have we don't have huge pressures from blackgrass.
And I think what you're talking about there, Will, the fact that you've got a dairy unit on the farm, the fact that you've got spring cropping, the fact that you're not drilling too early. I guess with the dairy unit, you've got rotational grass layers of 3 to 5 years, so that takes a huge amount of pressure off the grassweed burden. You're keeping on top of it with the cultural methods and with some of the chemical methods you're using. This autumn, thinking back to before Christmas, did you get that programme done as you wanted to? You got those herbicides on?
We did. We waited until we'd had a bit of rain, to be honest. And this year we did a pre-emergence and a peri-emergence. We sort of split it because we thought if it stays dry, nothing's going to work. So we had another small armoury in under our belt that once it rained and the crop came up, then we put another sort of low dose on. So.
And the active ingredients, you're basing it on flufenicet, diflufenicam, pendimethalin?
Yeah. Pre-emergence was, I'm going to use Hurricane and Liberator. Yeah. And then peri-emergence we used pendimethalin.
Yeah. So with that peri-emergence, top it with pendimethalin, you're just getting longer residual activity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's clearly, I mean, looking in the field of wheat, that's clearly doing the job.
Yeah.
So as I said at the beginning of this section, the fact that you're incorporating the rotation with the dairy unit, the spring cropping, not drilling on this part of the farm until middle of October at the earliest, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what's helping you out with not allowing blackgrass to get away, which is great to hear. Yeah. The results to me look good. I guess this is representative, and you're quite happy of it.
I'm very happy. Yeah.
And in that case, spring follow-ups. Broadleaf weeds mainly, I'm guessing, possibly wild oats if there's any? Not
so much down here at the top of the farm.
Yeah.
Wild oats, yes. We've got to go through, there's a couple of areas to treat with Broadway Star.
Right. So with Broadway Star, the pyroxylum, the fluoroxylum, you're getting additional activity on grass as well on any spring germinators.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean the fluoroxylum, we've got products that are down with fluoroxylum in, and it's a great active ingredient. Does a very good job on broadleaf weeds. So yeah, I can see why everything's looking in such good shape.
Yeah.
And so David and Andy, just wrapping up the episode, any final thoughts from you two as we head into spring?
Thinking generally to begin with, the consensus is that cereals in particular are looking pretty good. There's a lot of potential there. There are some lush, possibly slightly forward crops, so I'm sure Andy will talk about the potential for disease pressure building there. Thinking of herbicides, the applications made in the autumn, be they pre-em, peri-em or early post-em, I think people in the main are quite satisfied with those. They've done the job. The one thing that I think is causing growers in certain regions continuing headaches is the future of oilseed rape. It's becoming so difficult to establish successfully now. Lots of reports of cabbage stone flea beetle larvae being found, and that's clearly going to have an impact on the crop. So the cereals, yeah, I'd say they're in good shape. The oilseed rape, the summary's probably some and some, to be fair.
Andy?
I think just standing in this crop and seeing how forward and vigorous it is, it's just reminding us all that crops have come through well, both wheat and barley. There are also some good looking winter barley crops around, and disease is going to be an issue, particularly if the weather starts getting showery with these canopies. As I've said, you get a microclimate, etc. And even in varieties where we think we're pretty clean, we often have residual septoria, or in barley, rhynchosporium down the bottom, just waiting for the opportunities. But as we can see here, incorporating good levels of varietal resistance is really a tool in the armoury now. But we shouldn't forget, of course, fungicide programs, they work together with varietal resistance. We want them to complement each other. And also, one real strong message for me is that including multi-site chemistry in programs is a really good thing to do. While we still have access to multi-sites, I strongly believe that we should build programs around them, both for contact protectant disease control, but also for resistance management, to safeguard these single site products that we have now, such as the azoles and the SDHRs, but also this new chemistry that's coming. I still think it's vitally important to try and protect that chemistry to try and make sure it lasts for as long as it possibly can and keep it effective. So, you know, there are challenges because regulatory wise, you know, the things are coming under pressure, but real strong message I think is maximise the use of multi-sites throughout programmes. And I've already mentioned Folpet from Adama. It's a multi-site product. It's got septoria activity, Rhynchosporium in barley, and we should utilise it. It's got this strength of not interfering also with the uptake of a partner product, which can be particularly important in situations of fast cycling diseases such as rust, particularly yellow rust in certain varieties in certain parts of the country, where you want the curative activity of the partner to be maximised, and Folpet doesn't cause antagonism, and it's a good choice in some T0, T1 situations especially.
Will, you were nodding along to a few things there that Andy was saying. Did you have any final thoughts from yourself?
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, you know, the chemistry history coming through, multi-site usage, I'm a strong believer in. So, you know, especially where we're going to come out of Brexit, I think chemicals are going to be harder to get hold of. So, you know, the new ones that are coming through, I think, you know, need to cover every eventuality if they can. So, if one product does a wider range of diseases, you know, all well and good. So.
Good stuff. Well, that's it for the first episode of Season 2 of ArableAware. Thanks once again to David Roberts and Andy Bailey of Adama for joining me, and of course Will Butler here at Whitewall Farm, and to Sam and Robin of Small Robot Company. Don't forget you can listen to the whole of our first season and ensure you receive automatic downloads of future episodes by subscribing to us on your favourite podcast app, such as iTunes and Spotify. Just search for ArableAware, that's all one word. And whilst you're there, if you've enjoyed the show, of course, then please do give us a positive rating and review, as that helps us up the podcast charts. Alternatively, you can find us on the Adama UK website. Just go to uk.information-hub.adama.com/ArableAware, or go to adama.com/UK/EN and search there for podcast, and you should find all the previous shows. If you'd like us to come and record the show on your farm, or if you've got anything you want to comment on or want us to cover off in future episodes, then please do get in touch with us either on the Hub, on our Facebook page, via Twitter using @AdamaUK_, or simply by email via ukinquiries@adama.com. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.